Good morning. Welcome to Daybreak Live on A News. I'm your host, Dilek Tuna. Let's start with the top stories for the morning. US President Donald Trump says Washington could end the Iran campaign in 2 or 3 weeks, with forces set to leave very soon. 2 Indonesian UN peacekeepers were killed by a roadside explosion in southern Lebanon. That's according to initial reports. And French senators approve a law banning social media for children under 15, citing teen safety. First this morning, the United States is signalling it may be nearing the end of its campaign in Iran, with President Trump suggesting operations could only last up to 2 weeks.
The US President Donald Trump says Washington could end its military campaign in Iran within 2 or 3 weeks, adding that US forces would be leaving very soon as he signaled operations are nearing completion.
I would say that within 2 weeks, maybe 3. We're hitting them very hard. Last night we knocked out tremendous amounts of missile-making facilities. As you probably read or wrote, we knocked out. Excuse me.
Pardon me for interrupting. The U.S. will be gone or done with the war in 2 or 3 weeks?
I think with 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah.
At the same time, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian said the country has the necessary will to end the conflict, but only if guarantees are put in place to prevent further escalation, underscoring persistent gaps between the two sides. Tensions remain high across the region, with Iran's Revolutionary Guards warning they will target US companies, while continued attacks on shipping in the Strait of Hormuz disrupt global energy supplies. Meanwhile, Israel says it is strengthening regional alliances to counter what it describes as the Iranian threat, as strikes and retaliatory attacks continue across multiple fronts, including Lebanon and Iraq. Despite signs of possible diplomacy, the situation remains volatile, with both sides signaling readiness to escalate even as they speak of ending the war.
The upcoming days will be decisive. Iran knows that, and there's almost nothing they can militarily do about it. Yes, they will still shoot some missiles, but we will shoot them down. Of note, the last 24 hours saw the lowest number of enemy missiles and drones fired by Iran.
Meanwhile, the United States is increasing its military presence, with a 3rd aircraft carrier, the USS George H.W. Bush, joining 2 others already in the region. Against that backdrop, there is still no clear timeline for a ceasefire, with developments on the ground and ongoing diplomatic efforts expected to shape the next phase of the conflict.
Now let's have a look at stories making front pages this morning. We're looking first at our very own A News, and it's covered the latest on the US-Israel war on Iran. Some of the major points covered there. Rubio signalled growing confidence within the US administration that the conflict may end soon. However, fighting is continuing across the region. An Iranian drone allegedly targeted fuel tanks at Kuwait International Airport, sparking a large fire. Luckily, no casualties were reported there. And emergency crews were deployed to contain the fire. Initial reports indicate that only material damage at the facilities operated by the Kuwait Aviation Fueling Company were affected, and authorities said the situation is under control, thankfully. And lastly, another major impact of this conflict has been the rise in fuel prices due to supply pressure, and Nepal has increased fuel prices, raising aviation fuel costs for international flights up to 117.4%. So let's look at our second front page now. And CNN has also covered the latest in the Middle East. almost the same details have been covered there. Rubio's statement that the fighting may be over within 2 to 3 weeks, and President Trump is expected to deliver an address on Wednesday night regarding Iran. It comes after he said the US could be done with its war with Iran in 2 to 3 weeks. So we'll wait to hear for that later on today. And another statement from Trump, he said the US will have nothing to do with the closed Strait of Hormuz, telling other countries, including key US allies, to, quote, go get your own oil. So you may have been following for some time now that there's been a lot of disagreement between the allies of the United States and Russia's stance on the war in Iran. So he's obviously now expressing his dissatisfaction there, telling them to go get their own oil. And Trump, he's also said that gas prices will quickly go down once the US completes its operation in Iran. And another development there, Iran's threatened to attack US tech companies like Apple, Microsoft, Google, Meta, IBM, HP, Intel, Tesla, if more Iranian leaders are killed, according to semi-official outlet FAST. So that's another development there on the Iran-US-Israel conflict. Now let's move on to our third front page. We've got Le Monde and France eyes social media ban for under 15s, following Australia's lead, actually, they introduced a social media ban for under 15s. So if the bill is passed, all social media platforms will refuse new users under 15, and pre-existing accounts that belong to under 15s will be suspended. So you may remember in December last year, Australia became the first country in the world to require TikTok, YouTube, was YouTube, Snapchat and other top sites to remove accounts held by under 15s or face heavy fines. Indonesia began enforcing a social media ban for users under the age of 16 on Saturday, and has already issued summons letters to Google and Meta over their failure to comply with the law. And Austria announced last week it would soon ban social media for children up to the age of 14, with a plan to present a new law as early as this summer. And Spain and Denmark have also announced their intention to introduce a digital age of majority for social networks. So that's Le Monde, that's our third page for this morning. Now we'll have a look at our fourth and final page. UK to pay France extra £16 million in stopgap deal to patrol Channel beaches. So the stopgap arrangement, which will last for 2 months, comes after French negotiators refused to agree to UK demands for further interventions and patrols to stop asylum seekers from reaching the UK via the Channel. It's understood that the French government also refused to guarantee that patrols would continue without extra funds. Home Office negotiators insisted on a huge surge of extra officers under the new agreement, as well as a guarantee of increase in the number of small boat interventions by French officials as the UK, as they sought to disrupt gang activity. So Paris is concerned that the UK demands could put the lives of asylum seekers and French officers at greater risk. That's what okay, so our front pages are gone from our backboard. That pretty much covers what we've got this morning for our press review. We'll take a short break now, and we'll be back with, we'll have a closer look at the world news. See you then.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption. Well, hello and welcome to Primetime. What a show we've got lined up for you today. In a complex world, clarity is power. Two hours live, diplomacy dissected in a spin-free environment. That's Prime Time with me, Guy Schoen, weekdays on A News. Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabala. One important note to clear. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are recording on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam,
Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kiev, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent,
Almaty, Kazakhstan,
Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, for A News.
Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak. Now let's have a look at the global stories. Tensions in the Middle East are rising again as recent strikes around Beirut have led to increasing casualties and signalled a further deterioration in the situation. According to reports, the attacks mainly targeted vehicles in the southern outskirts of the capital and nearby areas. The Israeli military said it carried out 2 separate strikes in the Beirut area.
On Wednesday, 2 Israeli strikes hit areas around Beirut. Lebanon's health ministry said at least 7 people were killed and 24 injured. The attacks targeted vehicles in the southern outskirts of the capital and nearby areas. They are part of Israel's escalating operations in Lebanon. Officials say at least 1,200 people have been killed and 1.2 million displaced so far. The conflict intensified after Hezbollah fired rockets at Israel. This came 2 days after Iran was struck by Israel and the United States. Israel then launched new ground and air operations. The Israeli military said it carried out 2 strikes in the Beirut area. The targets were a senior Hezbollah commander and another member of the group. It did not confirm whether they were killed. Lebanon's state news agency NNA reported that one strike hit a car in Calda. 2 people were killed and 3 injured. The second strike hit vehicles in Jaynah. 5 people were killed and 21 injured. Hezbollah has not yet commented on the strikes.
A roadside explosion in southern Lebanon has killed 2 Indonesian peacekeepers and injured 2 others. The incident occurred near Bani Hayyan and, according to initial investigations, was caused by an improvised explosive device. Another Indonesian peacekeeper was killed late Sunday by an explosion. UN Chief Jean-Pierre Lacroix said UNIFIL is investigating. Israel's Ambassador Danny Danon blamed Hezbollah, saying rockets were fired near UN positions.
Israel is coordinating closely with UNIFIL to reduce risk. Meanwhile, Hezbollah is exploiting their presence. On the 22nd, Hezbollah is...
Pope Leo has urged US President Donald Trump to seek a way out of the war with Iran, calling for efforts to reduce violence and de-escalate the conflict. Speaking outside Rome, the pontiff expressed hope that Washington is looking for an off-ramp to bring the fighting to an end.
I'm told that President Trump recently stated that he would like to end the war. Hopefully he's looking for an off-ramp. Hopefully he's looking for a way to decrease the amount of violence, of bombing, which would be a significant contribution to removing the hatred that's being created and that's increasing constantly in the Middle East and elsewhere. So I would certainly continue to give this call to all leaders of the world to say, come back to the table to dialogue. Let's look for solutions to problems. Let's look for ways to reduce the amount of violence.
Europe and Ukraine have united against the drone threat from Iran and Russia. According to Kaya Kalas, the conflicts are interconnected and both Europe and Ukraine are acting together.
And the new war has captured Middle East. Both wars are very much interlinked. Iran designed the drones that Russia is using against you and is mass producing now. Both Russia and Iran use them to attack their neighbors. In the face of this, we stand together. We all agree that the Strait of Hormuz has to be opened and it's a priority. Tehran cannot have a veto over the Middle East energy flows, and it can't not be a toll booth.
European Union energy ministers are preparing to hold a video call to assess how the Iran war could affect the bloc's energy security, as concerns grow about potential disruptions to global supply routes. EU officials have warned member states to prepare for what could be a prolonged period of instability in energy markets, particularly if tensions continue to affect shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most important oil transit routes. EU officials are now reviewing contingency measures, including possible coordination among member states to manage supply risks, reduce consumption and stabilise markets. If volatility continues, the decisions highlight how geopolitical tensions can quickly translate into economic challenges, particularly for energy important regions such as Europe. Joining us now is our guest, Kostas Geropoulos. He's the Director of Energy, Climate Policy and Security at NE Global Media. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, EU energy ministers are discussing how the Iran war could affect supply security. How vulnerable is Europe to disruptions in global energy markets right now?
Well, actually, the EU ministers had a video call yesterday, and they reviewed because the high prices of gas have been up 70% and 50% for oil. So that's affecting oil markets. So the discussion was to have a coordinated response. EU presidency is currently held by Cyprus. So the energy minister, Michael Damianos, held the conference with all the EU energy ministers and Dan Jorgensen, the EU commissioner, and they decided that the action has to be taken. The EU is well prepared at the time, but there's a series of measures that need to be taken as well, because as the commissioner said, the EU has to be prepared for the long run, and it seems like this crisis may not be over anytime soon. So better to be prepared than to be sorry. The EU coordinating group for the energy union and the Energy Union Task Force security are in effect ready to coordinate and take measures if necessary. And also, the EU is urged member states to implement a 10-point plan by the IEA to for energy saving. At that time, also, it urged member states to take certain measures, like, for example, use biofuels or other substitutes for fossil fuel products, and avoid any unnecessary maintenance of refineries, so that oil is available to the EU member states.
Okay, and Kostas, officials have warned of potentially prolonged instability in energy markets. What factors could determine how long disruptions might last?
Well, we've seen that. Even if what we heard recently from President Trump, that he plans to withdraw from the Middle East, the issue with the Strait of Hormuz is going to be there, and it's been changing daily. We don't know exactly what the plan for the future is going to be. They've been discussing about Iran charging some kind of toll or whatever, but there has to be some kind of plan that long-term guarantees the opening and the safe passage of Hormuz. Also, don't forget that in the region, a lot of the structures have been already damaged. For example, Qatar's LNG infrastructure.
Mhm.
This is going to take time to repair. So, there might not be an exit from the crisis anytime soon.
Okay, so this seems like an obvious question, but I'll still ask, even though Europe doesn't directly import large volumes from Iran, why does instability in the Middle East still affect European energy prices?
Well, the gas, even though it's not we don't import as much from Qatar, the overall world price of gas has been increasing. Also, Europe has been affected by the crisis in Ukraine, and since 2020, there has been plans to completely phase out Russian gas. So, and it's in the process of energy transition, so it would take a while for it. But the plan is there for Europe to become eventually energy independent as much as possible, increase green energy. We've seen, I was in Baku recently for the South Gas Energy Corridor Ministerial Council. I'm going to be back in Baku in June for the Baku Energy Week. We've seen that Europe is increasingly looking to Central Asia and other reliable suppliers for gas. But it's a global tension happening. Also, that the Europe is looking into the future. The Commission urged the member states to make plans for next winter. Stocks are already in good place, so that has been able to absorb the crisis in a little bit. But also, they're looking at to make sure that because also 20% from European oil is contributed for the IEA release, immediate emergency release fund. So, European Union also contributes quite a bit to the IEA.
Okay, and Kostas, my last question. So the EU previously had to respond quickly to disruptions following the war in Ukraine. How prepared is Europe today compared to previous energy crises?
Oh, it's been much more prepared. It has been, it's even before the war in Ukraine, from the first disruptions back in almost a decade ago. Europe has been increasingly looking for other suppliers. But the EU is not the European Council, and there's been a disagreement between the EU member states, and we've seen other countries progressing more and becoming more energy independent, while other countries are still very much reliant on Russian gas and oil, especially like Hungary and Slovakia. So there's a lot of back and forth, but I think that Also, I mean, Europe has been increasing its renewable supplies, also looking for critical minerals, which are very important for battery storage and other industries. So, it's an ongoing process.
Okay, Kostas, thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's been a pleasure talking to you today.
Me too.
Ukraine says it's ready to pause attacks on Russian energy targets if Moscow does the same, signaling openness to an Easter truce. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, says Kyiv could reciprocate as both sides face pressure from rising global energy prices and ongoing strikes. But the Kremlin has reacted cautiously. Spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Moscow had not seen a clear proposal from Kyiv and stressed that Russia is focused on achieving a broader peace agreement rather than a temporary ceasefire. The exchange underlines how far apart the two sides remain. A Russian AN-26 military transport plane has crashed in Crimea, killing all 29 people on board, according to Russian news agencies citing the Defense Ministry. The aircraft went down on the Crimean Peninsula annexed by Russia from Ukraine in 2014. According to the authorities, the ministry said 23 passengers and 6 crew members were killed. There were no reports of survivors. Initial assessments suggest a technical fault may have caused the crash. Russia's defense ministry did not immediately respond to requests for further comment.
The latest dispute centered around Crimea, with Trump sharply criticizing Zelensky for refusing to acknowledge.
Argentina has designated Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization in a move that aligns it more closely with the United States. The decision was announced by the presidential office, which said the designation allows authorities to impose financial sanctions and other restrictions on the group. Officials link the decision to the IRGC's alleged backing of Hezbollah, which Argentina blames for the 1994 AMIA bombing in Buenos Aires that killed 85 people and injured hundreds. US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has cast doubt on Washington's commitment to NATO's collective defense. He said the decision ultimately rests with President Donald Trump, criticizing European allies for not backing the US in the war against Iran.
And as far as NATO is concerned, that's a decision that will be left to the president. But I'll just say a lot has been laid bare. A lot has been shown to the world about what our allies would be willing to do for the United States of America when we undertake an effort of this scope on behalf of the free world. These are missiles that don't even range the United States of America. They range allies and others. And yet when we ask for additional assistance or simple access basing overflight, we get questions or roadblocks or hesitations. And the president's pointing out, you don't have much of an alliance if you have countries that are not willing to stand with you when you need them. He's simply pointing that out, and ultimately it'll be his decision of what that looks like after this is complete.
France is weighing new limits on how young people use social media as concerns grow over its impact on children's well-being. The proposed law has sparked debate among teenagers, parents and policymakers over where to draw the line.
France is moving closer to restricting social media access for younger users after senators approved a draft law targeting children under 15. The proposal is part of a wider global push to address the risks social media poses to young people, with countries across Europe and beyond considering similar measures. President Emmanuel Macron wants the law in place by the start of the next academic year in September, potentially following Australia, where a nationwide ban for under-16s came into force in December. However, the French Senate has taken a more cautious approach. While the lower house backed a blanket ban, senators amended the bill to target only platforms considered harmful to children. Other platforms could remain accessible with parental consent, with the list to be defined by decree. Some lawmakers warn a total ban could raise constitutional concerns and undermine parental authority.
We believe that while a blanket ban on social media for minors under 15 sends a strong message, it risks being unconstitutional and does not respect parental authority. We support a more targeted approach, defining harmful platforms by decree, while allowing access to others with parental consent.
Others argue restrictions alone are not enough.
We must therefore take effective action. But let's be clear, this text is merely a superficial law. It gives the impression of addressing a legitimate concern while refraining from truly tackling the root causes of the problem, because prohibition is not education. Banning minors from social media does not teach them to use it responsibly.
Meanwhile, young users who hold differing views on how far restrictions should go, they say social media remains a central part of their daily lives.
It's true that our generation is often caricatured like that as the younger generation, always on our phones, etc. But that's because past generations didn't necessarily have access to phones, and they can't necessarily understand the positive aspect it has for us. It allows us to communicate, etc. So social media isn't essential, but it still preserves a small part of us, memories, photos, etc. And I think it would be a shame to lose that with a ban.
The move comes amid growing legal and political pressure on tech companies. In the United States, a jury recently found Meta and Google negligent for designing platforms harmful to young users, a decision that could influence future cases.
The UK will pay France an additional £16.2 million to continue patrols along Channel beaches. The two-month arrangement is intended to prevent a rise in small boat crossings. However, talks on a longer-term plan stalled after France rejected UK demands for tougher enforcement measures, including more direct action to stop boats from leaving shore. French officials warned that such steps could increase risks for both migrants and police. Cuba says it will prioritise hospitals and electricity generation after receiving a major fuel shipment from Russia, as the country continues to face severe power shortages. Amid ongoing devastation in Gaza, small efforts are being made to support children affected by months of conflict. One initiative in Khan Yunis is offering a brief escape and a moment of relief for some of the youngest victims of the war.
In Gaza, where the scars of war remain etched into the landscape, the sound of children's laughter offers a rare moment of relief. An event organised with the support of a humanitarian group brought together young people affected by months of conflict, offering games, activities and a brief escape from the reality around them. Organisers designed the initiative to bring smiles to the faces of the children and help them forget the devastating psychological effects of the conflict, even for a moment. The Palestinian death toll in Gaza from Israel's deadly war since October 2023 has reached 72,280 people, with 172,014 others wounded, the health ministry said on Monday. In a statement, the ministry said that 2 people were killed and a third was injured by Israeli fire in the past 24 hours. According to the ministry, at least 704 people have been killed and 1,914 others injured by Israeli fire since the ceasefire deal took effect on October 10, 2025. The ministry explained that local authorities managed to recover 756 bodies from the rubble since the ceasefire. The Israeli war has displaced almost the entire population of Gaza and caused widespread destruction, affecting 90% of civilian infrastructure, with reconstruction costs estimated by the United Nations at about $70 billion.
We'll take a short break now, and when we return, we'll take a look at the regional stories. Stay with us.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome back and thank you for joining me this morning. Now let's take a look at stories impacting the region. Syria's President Ahmed al-Shara has visited the UK for the first time, where he's held talks with Prime Minister Keir Starmer amid a gradual thaw in relations after years of strain. The two leaders met in Downing Street to discuss cooperation on migration, security and regional stability.
Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara has made his first official visit to the UK. He held talks with Prime Minister Keir Starmer at Downing Street, a sign that relations between the two countries are improving after years of estrangement. Al-Shara is the first Syrian head of state to visit London since Bashar al-Assad in 2002, underlining the significance of the trip. The meeting took place on Tuesday and was described by both sides as an important moment for the future of UK-Syria relations. Talks focused on key issues including migration, border security and efforts to tackle people smuggling networks, with the Prime Minister outlining plans for closer cooperation on returns. Keir Starmer also welcomed Syria's actions against Daesh and progress in counter-terrorism cooperation between the two countries. The two leaders discussed the wider situation in the Middle East, stressing the need to avoid further escalation and restore stability in the region. They also highlighted the importance of reopening the Strait of Hormuz, warning of the serious economic impact of any prolonged disruption. Economic cooperation was also on the agenda, with both sides pointing to potential opportunities for British businesses to support Syria's infrastructure and reconstruction efforts. The visit comes after the UK formally re-established diplomatic ties with Syria in 2025, ending years of strained relations during the Assad era. Zeina Farizadeh, News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Uzbekistan is hosting the 5th anniversary of the Space Technology Conference, bringing together global industry leaders as Uzbekistan steps up its ambitions in the space sector. Sevil Rajapova has more from Uzbekistan.
Tashkent is hosting the 5th anniversary of the Space Technology Conference, bringing together more than 400 delegates and representatives from over 30 countries to discuss the future of the region's space industry. The forum comes at a key moment for Uzbekistan, as the country advances plans to launch its first national satellite by 2028 and is currently working towards selecting and training its first astronaut. This year's discussions focus on satellite development, commercial spaceflight and expanding Central Eurasia's role in the global space economy, as countries across the region accelerate their national space programs.
We are seeing how the private sector and the government is investing a lot to the space sector. We see how the space is becoming a crucial part of economical development of the countries, would it be monitoring of economical sector, development of agriculture, development of the scientific research and others. So it is a most important time to be in space. The first scientific small satellite is already under development by our students who are studying in Japan, in Kyushu University. They are studying their master's degree. During this master's degree, they are developing, assembling their first ever satellite. The name of the satellite was given by our respectable president, Shavkat Mirziyoyev. The name of the satellite is Mirza Ulugh. It's symbolic because Mirza Ulugh is one of the, I would say, biggest historical person of Uzbekistan.
Participants say growing demand for satellite data is driving closer cooperation between governments and international companies, as the region looks to strengthen its position in the global space market.
The advantage of our satellites is that we're collecting data every day. So we collect the data, we store the data, and the users can access the data. We have a quite rich historical archive that starts from 2016 up until now. And then we cover different areas in, for example, forestry, agriculture, water management, because there is a big environmental issues, right? For example, if we talk about the Central Asia region, there is a water management crisis, water crisis, where there is no enough water supply. So using our data is actually helps to identify those areas that are prone to the droughts, for example, and then government can take the actions.
The presence of international astronauts and private space companies reflects a broader shift towards commercialization and global collaboration in space exploration.
We have already created a know-how in that field, how to select, how to run a astronaut selection program, as well as how to get ready, making preparations for this space program, requirements in the other half of the world, as well as comparing that as preparation program as well as the execution program in the run and this in the eastern part of the world. So we are ready to provide any support that we can for our sister country, Uzbekistan here.
The conference is also seen as a stepping stone towards the International Astronautical Congress 2028, which Uzbekistan is set to host in Samarkand, further reinforcing its ambitions to become a key player in the global space industry. It is Sivil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Joining me now is Dr. Christian Fechtinger. He's the Executive Director from International Astronautical Federation from Tashkent, Uzbekistan. Dr. Christian, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome once again to the program. How might Uzbekistan's investment in space technology reshape its economic diversification strategy?
Well, the ambitions and the steps that Uzbekistan is taking in terms of developing their space ecosystem is amazing, and it will have for sure a larger impact on the general development of the economics and innovation here in the country. The region in general is very actively developing their space ambitions, and we from the International Astronautical Federation are very pleased that we could select Samarkand in Uzbekistan to host the next International Astronautical Congress in 2028, which is actually the biggest gathering of the space community every year in a different city. And this will give another boost to the development here in the country.
Okay, and what role can emerging space actors like Uzbekistan play in balancing the dominance of established space powers?
I could hardly hear the questions, but
sure, I can repeat.
Try to answer.
I can repeat my question if you like, Doctor.
Yes, please, could you repeat?
So what role can emerging space actors like Uzbekistan play in balancing the dominance of established space powers?
Yes, space is really an endeavor today that needs collaboration and cooperation of many countries. No single country can alone achieve really great steps forward. And therefore, today, more and more, all emerging countries are actually understanding the value of space and the contribution it provides to socioeconomic development. But to develop their own national space ecosystem, the best and easiest way is to connect with the so-called developed space nations, because from there they can get knowledge, they can get help in terms of developing the workforce that is necessary, and it provides also the opportunity to participate in large-scale projects, which for some countries that are just at the beginning will be very difficult to implement themselves. So in general, globalization in the space field, I think, is a trend that we can see, and that is very important and will help countries, emerging countries, to develop much quicker.
Okay, and Doctor, to what extent could regional cooperation in Central Asia accelerate technological innovations in the space sector?
Yes, regional cooperation is another very important element, because countries of the region are faced with similar problems, but they also form one big market. That is also important for the rest of the world to concentrate, especially on the Central Eurasia region. We see a very strong development, of course, in Turkey. We see very strong development in space in Azerbaijan, now Uzbekistan. I think the world in space will more and more look in this region, set up cooperations, work together, and see this region also as a very important market for services provided from space.
And what opportunities and risks arise from expanding private sector involvement in Uzbekistan's space initiatives?
Well, I can only see positive tendencies, of course, and positive effects of this. I do not see any big risk in this. Of course, when you start a space ecosystem in a country, it needs first political will and the support of the government and the leadership of the country. It is based on budgetary support, of course, in order to develop the workforce, in order to create a climate that is positive for creation of startups, to attract investments. But then, in parallel to this one, of course, the industry sector, the private sector, needs to develop. And that's a natural tendency, a natural way how an ecosystem in a country is developing. And we will see similar development here in Uzbekistan very soon.
Doctor, what lessons can other developing nations draw from Uzbekistan's approach to building a national space ecosystem?
Well, I think emerging nations can just take as a main message, be ambitious, because what we see here in Uzbekistan, led by the government, by the president of the country, is that the country has set high ambitions. They want to achieve a lot. They want to create a satellite constellation, and they are jumping into human spaceflight, which is a very important thing in order to inspire the next generation. You need to have the next generation embark on space, engage in STEM education. You need to have the general public support this. And what better way than to have your own astronauts being flying in space and be an ambassador of the country. So that's what I see. The big ambition of the country, I think, is a good example for other emerging nations.
Okay. Dr. Christian, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been a pleasure and very informative.
Thank you very much.
Now, a parliamentary committee in Iran has approved a draft bill tabled by MPs to impose tolls on the Strait of Hormuz. Our Turaj Shirliliu has more from Tehran.
1 month into the Israeli-US war on Iran, Tehran is asserting its sovereignty, while a select parliamentary committee passed a draft bill to discuss excising taxes on the transit of vessels carrying oil and gas from the Strait of Hormuz. According to senior MP Nasrullah Pejmanfar, Iran is going to maintain security of the Strait of Hormuz, and for this reason, which is considered a form of service provision, it will charge transit fees. The chairman of Article 90 Constitutional Committee was quoted saying by the Parliament's news website that the strategic waterway is not blocked Rather, it is shot only to hostile enemy ships. Over the weekend, Iranian parliamentarians proposed 2 urgent draft bills for discussion at the plenary sessions on withdrawing from the Non-Proliferation Treaty and on excising environment pollution taxes and charging pilotage fees in Hormuz Strait. Meantime, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, in a phone contact with his French counterpart Jean-Noël Barrot, stressed that any provocative act by the aggressors and their supporters, including at the UN Security Council regarding the Strait of Hormuz, will complicate the situation. He said, the passage of vessels belonging to other countries is carried out in coordination with the competent Iranian authorities. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting from downtown Tehran, Foreign News TV.
China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi said Pakistan's mediation in the Middle East serves the interests of all parties. He made the remarks during a meeting in Beijing with Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Mohammad Ishaq Dar. The two sides discussed international issues and regional conflicts. Wang said Pakistan will play a key role in the peace process, while Dar highlighted Pakistan-China friendship and pledged support for peace efforts. China and Pakistan also put forward a 5-point initiative for peace in the Gulf and the Middle East, calling for a ceasefire, early peace talks, protection of civilian and transport infrastructure, and upholding the UN Charter.
Members of your delegation, I'm extremely grateful for your kind invitation.
China's economic footprint in Central Asia continues to grow, particularly through infrastructure financing and long-term investment projects across the region. At the same time, countries are pursuing different approaches to managing external borrowing and financial partnerships. Our correspondent reports on the role of Chinese capital in the region's external debt and how Kazakhstan positions itself within this broader picture.
The share of Chinese capital in the external debt of Central Asian countries varies significantly across the region, with Kazakhstan showing one of the lowest levels. According to estimates based on data from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, Chinese loans account for 30.5% of external debt in Kyrgyzstan, 16.1% in Tajikistan, 13.4% in Turkmenistan, and 7.5% in Uzbekistan. In Kazakhstan, the figure stands at just 3.6%. Across the region, Chinese financing has been largely directed toward infrastructure, including energy, roads, and transport. China often acts not only as a lender, but also as a systemic investor, taking part in construction and long-term servicing of projects. Kazakhstan, however, maintains a more diversified borrowing strategy. It works not only with China, but also with European partners, the Eurasian Economic Union, and international financial institutions, reducing reliance on a single source of funding. Analysts say Chinese capital in Kazakhstan is spread across multiple projects and not concentrated in strategic sectors, which helps limit risks. In contrast, in countries with higher exposure, such as Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, Chinese loans remain a key development tool, but may also increase long-term financial vulnerability. Experts note that while China's model delivers clear short-term gains, over time it can deepen economic dependence. Fariza Kalimurzin, Almaty, A-News.
Thank you for watching Daybreak with Dilek Tuna. We'll be back later this afternoon for your next news updates. Stay tuned.